Welcome back. I'm your host, Kelle Sparta, transformational shaman, spiritual coach, spiritual business coach. I'm here with my best friend in Boquete, Katherine Loranger, and she is an amazing spiritual business coach. And we are talking today about the power of the niche, why focused offerings create bigger impact. And so we're going to be talking about niche today. This is the biggest complaint that I hear, or the biggest resistance I get from new entrepreneurs anytime I talk to them, is they're like, oh, but I can work with anybody, but I can work with anybody. It's like, yeah, but if you try to talk to everybody, you talk to nobody. Because if you're not saying something specific to somebody specific, then you're really not saying anything at all. This is the biggest challenge, is they feel like it's a resistance. They feel like it's limiting their business. But in actuality, it is making your business easier to sell, because or making your product easier to sell, because it's clear, one, who is it for? Two, who is it not for? If you can't say who it's not for, then you don't actually have a product, right? You've just got an idea. And I often like to say, if you don't piss somebody off with your marketing, you haven't said anything, right? Because your marketing should be very clearly aligned to your niche. And if somebody who is polar opposite of your niche would not get annoyed or frustrated or upset or ticked about something you said, then you didn't say anything, because you're not actually addressing your niche appropriately. And what you have to remember is that there are always people who cannot use your services, or will not use your services, and should not use your services. Yeah. I had a conversation on LinkedIn the other day with somebody, and I asked her, I'm like, who is your market? And she said, any human being. And I was like, no. No. That is not true. That is not true. One, you're doing healing work, which means that you are only working with people who are open to doing healing work. Let's start with that, right? They have to actually be open to receiving the healing, or else you can't work with them, because they're not going to pay for it, because they're not open to it. Two, you're only working with people who can afford to pay for your services. That's another piece. Then there's the other piece of, what type of healing work do you do, and what does it work on? Because only people with those problems are going to be in your market, right? So when we refuse to target our niche, what we're doing is we're frittering our energy, because we're trying to send it in too many directions at once. You need to have one, maybe two clear markets, right? Now, if you've been up and running for a while, you've got all your systems in place, and you're getting business in the door on a regular basis from 2 full markets, and that's happening like clockwork, and you don't have to worry about it, then you can add a third. But not until everything is done and ready to go. Just like they say with physical locations, you need to get your first physical location up, running, and systemized to the point where it can run without you before you open the second one, or else both are going to fail, because you're not there to manage both at the same time. And these are the things you have to make sure that you are really focused in a particular direction in order for you to be successful. Otherwise, it's like a delta versus a deep river, right? On a delta, you've got water that goes everywhere. It's 3 inches deep, and it doesn't have any movement to it. Or you have a raging river, deep, deep river that just flows strongly in one direction. That's the difference between not niching in the delta and niching in the river. You're going to have a little bit of success in a lot of directions, but nothing significant. Or you're going to have a lot of success in one direction, and it's going to be super significant, because you have focused yourself and your business and your marketing and your messaging to that one intention and to that one niche. So you want to add to that, Katherine?
Yeah, I agree. Niche is all powerful, right? And I think, to be clear for people, it doesn't mean that you're not going to work with people if they show up and they're not in your niche, unless your product is really, I do this for women and it's specific to the biology, and a person who's not a woman comes and wants to do it. So but the power of the niche is that you're then able to communicate and have your messaging and your energy and your focus all moving in one direction. So you're really aligned, and it becomes, like you said, it becomes much more powerful. You get way more clarity in terms of, what is my messaging? How am I doing my marketing? How is it working? How is it not working? What do I need to tweak? What do I not need to tweak? And by talking to that specific person, you're also the people who might not be that specific person are also going to hear you. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs have a fear that, oh, if I niche down, then I'm like going to miss out all of these other opportunities. But it's like that squirrel, right? It's like a dog that's chasing too many balls. You don't get any. You just want to be focusing on one ball that you're chasing, and that is it. And then related to what you said about different markets, once you've got your niche identified, your messaging is on point, your marketing is working, and you will know this because you're getting sales and you're getting clients, right? You might think your messaging is on point, but if you're not actually getting business out of it, then it's not. Once that is humming along and working really well, you might look at a different market, but the same product, right? You don't necessarily need to create a brand new product. So for example, my coaching programs, they really like anybody could take it. And I've had anybody take them, right? And they get the results, they get the transformation. But if I say it's for anybody or everybody, then people are going to think, oh, that's just kind of meh, right? But if I say it's like it's for you specifically, then it's going to activate that within that person.
Yeah. And on the lines of the same concept of selling the same thing to different markets. So I do personal retreats here in Boquete, Panama. And I have two very different target markets for those personal retreats. One is 6, 7, and 8 figure entrepreneurs, right? Business owners. And that is a one type of sell to one type of market. And then the other one is spiritual practitioners, healers, and high end spiritual seekers, people who are beyond the beginning. And those are two different markets. Do they have overlap? Yes, they have a small amount of overlap in the Venn diagram, but to do a single sell to those markets is insane because they have very different motivating factors. They have very different language and they have very different reasons for doing the work. And so you need to be very certain about what those reasons are in order to do good messaging. And my sales page will have two different versions. Right now, there's just a basic sales page up because I've just started offering these. But I am going to make two completely different sales pages for them because they are completely different cells, even though it's the exact same product, which is a private
Mhm.
retreat with me. And the piece there will be crossover pieces, right? It's going to be the custom designed portion and the working with a shaman portion and the X amount of time in the beautiful area of Boquete, Panama and the cloud forest, blah, 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 right? All of that will be consistent. But the language is very different for those two different marketplaces. And you need to use the language of the people that you're talking to if you want to get their attention. In the spiritual world, they'd be talking about energetics and up leveling and 5D consciousness and all of the things around energy work, astral plane, and all of the stuff, right? But on the entrepreneur side, it would be things like activating your inner oracle and tapping your intuition for business. And it's going to be completely different languaging for the two different sales pages, right? And that's because you sell to the people that you've niched to sell to, and you want them to feel like it's specific to them. And so that's the piece that you've got to pay attention to as you do this.
I would, as you're speaking, Kelly, I would think too that there's going to be a bit of a difference, or could be a bit of a difference in terms of the price point that you're selling it at, depending on who you're selling it to. So, someone's a 6, 7, especially getting up into a 7 and 8 figure entrepreneur, that's where time is way more valuable than money. So, the price point could potentially be different, and the experience and the expectation is also going to be different. So somebody at a like the high 6, 7, 8 figure, the accommodation that they're going to expect is going to be very different than maybe somebody who's starting out, right? So you also need to be mindful about that depending on your offering, your price point, right? You can also undersell, right? So if your kind of niche is 8 figure earners and your price point is more around the, I don't know, the 5 figure earner, like there's a total disconnect. That is just, it's not going to work because they're not going to see any value in that, and vice
And
versa.
that's the other thing. Yeah, is that if your price point is too low, people will not believe you can deliver on the outcome. And that too low, quote unquote, is based upon the income of the person that you're selling to. Because, you know, it, to someone making $1 million a year, a $5,000 program is nothing.
Mhm.
There's it's like spending 50 cents if you're making $100,000 a year, $50 if you're making 100,000 a year. You have to keep that in mind as a percentage of the income that they earn. You have to see whether it's in alignment.
And that the value of the offer as
Correct.
well. Because you can't, like, if you've got a $97 product and then you're like, oh, this person is an eight-figure earner, I'm going to charge 10 times or whatever, how many times it is, but you haven't actually shifted the value of the product. That's
Yeah.
also incongruent.
Yeah. And a $97 product is not something that somebody in that price range is going to want because they don't want to
Mhm.
spend their time going through all these lessons on a $97 product.
Mhm.
They would rather have a 15-minute concentrated call in which they get their specific questions answered. They don't want to have to dig through
Mhm.
a lot of other crap because
Mhm.
time is worth
Mhm.
more than money to them. So,
So,
they're buying
yeah,
back.
so really
Yeah.
understanding your niche. And I think it can be helpful too, where you've maybe had some experience in working with that niche or you are connected to that niche in some way.
Yeah.
So doing some market research to understand like what are their pain points, their struggles, their challenges, what do they want to fix, what do they want to transform, what is the result that this particular niche wants to get, what's the price point that they're willing to pay, how do they determine value in it, what are expectations. And that can be conversational. You can do market research interviews. There's lots of market research data that's out there available that you can find. And then testing it, right? Test.
Yeah. And all of these things come into play. And then the other benefit of having a niche is that it allows you to target your ads more effectively. Then you can specifically designate certain places, things, whatever in your ads. And that allows you to spend your advertising dollar more intelligently and more effectively. So your return on ad spend is much higher because you're targeting the right people as opposed to trying to target everybody and hope it works, right? So
Mhm.
this is the key around niching. Now we're going to talk in, I think it's our next episode, about offer creation. I don't know. We've got 2 episodes coming up that we're talking about similar stuff, but we're going to be talking in another episode here about offer creation, and that's going to be intimately related to your niche. Alex Hormozy actually has a whole bunch of stuff on his website about how to start a business because he works with business owners who are at 3 million to take them to 30 million and exit. And so his on his website, he's got how to get to 3 million in his free stuff on his website. So I highly recommend you check that out. It's really great content. But one of the things that he talks about there is the fact that the more you niche, the more you charge. So if you've got a spiritual evolution program that is one level, if you have a spiritual evolution program for spiritual practitioners and teachers, that's another level. If you have a spiritual program for spiritual practitioners and teachers who are looking to scale their businesses, each time you niche smaller and smaller, you get more specific, you also get higher priced. And this is the key to getting things more easily saleable because I can look at that and say, yes, I'm a spiritual practitioner and looking for spiritual growth for myself and I'm looking to scale my business. So yes, that's for me, right? It's not just a maybe it's for me, I don't know, maybe I'll look at it later. Whereas it's yes, I better check this out before it goes away. That is part of the sell there. And also because it's so tightly niched and so specifically for that particular market, therefore it is more valuable because it's not general information, it's specific. And so that's the other piece of the puzzle. When you're looking at this is picking your target market, picking your niche is the first thing you do before you build your product. And people are always like, oh, I want to teach this. It's like, right, but who do you want to teach it to? Because how you teach it will be dependent upon who you teach it to. And so you need to decide this section before you go on to the next section. And so this is why we're doing the podcast in this order, is so that you get it in the right order. Okay. Anything else you want to add to this? Yeah. Okay. So I feel like we're complete here. Thank you so much for listening. And remember to subscribe and share. And also remember that what you focus on is what expands, what you intend is what you create. So choose wisely.